welcome to my second installment of Afterthoughts, and I've just finished reading A Child Called It by David Pelzer. I really didn't like this book. I know it's never good to doubt the validity of a survivor story. I know this. However, there's a lot of stuff in this book that rubbed me the wrong way and didn't sit right with me. First basic criticisms is that I believe he should have used a ghostwriter or some sort of assistance in writing this book because it is not well written. He is not a good writer. There is a lot of crucial information that he actually leaves out. He doesn't state the age he was when the abuse started. He doesn't state the age he was when he was taken out of his home. The only 2 years that are referenced are 1971, in which he says he was shy of his 11th birthday. So he was 10, and 1973, which is the year he was rescued. In setting up the family, he doesn't do a very good job of it. I don't know if he's the eldest child or if he's the middle child. I know he's not the youngest because his mother went on to have more children. That's basic information that, like, in a memoir should be told. The other thing is the book is just dripping with cliches, and it is so corny in places that I was just like cringing reading it. The line, "a single tear rolled down my cheek," is used twice or three times throughout the book, and I just thought that's one of the corniest lines you can put in a book. And then from chapter 3 to pretty much the ending, you don't get a chance to breathe. It is just one event after another, just dogpiled on top of each other. He goes into graphic detail of the abuse. Obviously it's like a survivor story, so it's kind of like, I guess he feels that he had to, but it is so unbelievably graphic that it feels unbelievable. Now, he was taken out of his family. Obviously something definitely did happen there. I'm not saying that all of this is fictional, but I feel like it was definitely fluffed in places. He's able to recollect such vivid memories of like pausing to rub his snotty nose before doing something, but then he goes back and he says things like, "I can't remember the colour of my mother's eyes or her hair," but he can remember that she doesn't wear makeup and that she is overweight. He also has a habit of reusing certain words, so he was constantly looking for a morsel of food, like rather than say like a scrap or something different than morsel, and I can't stand that when authors keep, it's the he said, she said, I said, you said kind of thing. And the reason why I do kind of question the validity of this is because this book is part of a trilogy. It is safe to say that I am not going to bother reading the other two books. However, he does go on to contradict himself. You can look up like the inconsistencies in this book, and it's kind of shocking. If you want to read it, get it from the library, but don't expect gold. There's absolutely nothing inspirational about this story. There is nothing educational about the story, so it's safe to say that I gave this 1 star on Goodreads and I wouldn't recommend it. And earlier today I finished off The Rules of Attraction by Bret, Easton, Ellis. I've been jonesing to read more of his stuff recently. I started listening to his podcasts, even though he hasn't actually uploaded one in ages, like since December I want to say. But I've been going back and listening to his old ones, and they're glorious. He does these lovely monologues at the start of them. Like, he could just do a full hour-long podcast of just him talking, and I would completely listen to it. Like, I don't care what it's about, I will listen to it. He's an author that I really, really like, and I want to finish everything that he's put out there, just so that I can then say like whether or not he's a favourite author or not. So I decided to go with Rules of Attraction because it's the first appearance of Patrick Bateman, so it's set in a liberal arts college in the 1980s. It's told from the viewpoint of multiple characters, but the main three are Paul, Lauren and Sean. They're in a love triangle, but they're not actually aware of it. What's interesting about this is that I got this from the library, obviously. It starts midstream and it ends midstream, and for a good while I thought that this was just missing a page, and I was like, what? Oh my god, I ordered this in at the library. I waited 2 weeks for it and it's missing a freaking page, but don't worry, that's how it starts. So it never really begins and it never really ends. It opens with Lauren, who is our main female character, losing her virginity or / being raped by 2 townies. She doesn't seem too bothered by it. She just seems relieved to have lost her virginity finally. She's like, whew, got that over and done with. But very disturbing. The other thing is that, like Bret Easton Ellis loves to do this, is have unreliable characters. So Sean and Paul's relationship is only told from Paul's perspective. There is no talk about it in Sean's narration whatsoever, to the point where I was like, what's going on here? So either Paul's making up their relationship in his head, or then Sean just doesn't want to admit it. Another thing that I loved about this is that it seems that all of Bret Easton Ellis's books take place in the same universe. So Sean is the younger brother of Patrick Bateman, and Patrick Bateman, I think he only has about a paragraph in this. We see the kind of original idea for Patrick Bateman rather than the serial killer that he later turned out to be, and his concern for his brother, because Sean's kind of like flunking out of college basically, and he just doesn't have any drive or motivation. He doesn't know what he's going to do. But there's a few crossover characters, like there's Clay from Less Than Zero is mentioned as kind of some LA guy, and I just really like that. And the main thing that I really liked about this is, so I read American Psycho and I read Less Than Zero when I was a teenager. So when I was reading this, I was hit by a weird wave of nostalgia. That sounds so odd. It's like I get nostalgic for writing styles. So like I think that influenced me as well as in really liking this. And I ended up giving it 4 stars on Goodreads. I really, really enjoyed it. And I just finished reading The Philosophy of Andy Warhol by Andy Warhol. I really, really enjoyed this. I didn't really know what to think of it when I was originally going into it. But basically it's just Andy Warhol shooting the shit on various topics. So he covers love, beauty, success, fame, art, and a various amount of other topics. And it was just a really nice kind of insight into his life or how he felt about specific things, and he was just a complete and utter character really. If you've ever seen an Andy Warhol interview, he does not interview well at all. He seems very elsewhere. You don't really get a good impression of the man, but he explains that, and it's because he's so jealous of the person doing the interview that he's so busy wanting to be the interviewer, he just can't focus on what he's being asked because he's imagining his own TV show in his head. He's a people person, which I found quite interesting, to the point though where I wouldn't be able to hack it if I were him. He likes to call people up and he refers to these people as B, and he says B is anyone who I can waste time with, and he'll call people up and just ask them to talk about their mundane life. And I think the only part of this book that I struggled with was the last B, who went through her complete cleaning process, and it was just so utterly boring, but he was fascinated by this apparently. Yeah, if you're into Andy Warhol and you want to find out more about him, I definitely recommend this, and I gave it 3 stars on Goodreads. Just finished reading The Quiet Room by Schiller and Amanda Bennett. This is a memoir on Laurie's life. Basically, it's a mental health memoir. When Laurie was 17, she developed schizophrenia, and it's her story of kind of hitting rock bottom and then rising up from it again. I've never read anything about schizophrenia before. Schizophrenia is one of those mental illnesses that really scares the shit out of me because of the fact that it can just pop out of nowhere. Also, Laurie suffers from bipolar disorder, so it's a pretty heavy, full-on memoir. What's interesting about this is that there's a few different perspectives in it because her parents have chapters in it, and so do her siblings and her friends. So at a certain point, it's like Laurie's telling her side of the story, and then you actually get the real version of events of how erratic she was behaving and how people didn't really know what to do with her. She ended up in various mental hospitals after trying to commit suicide a few times, but I did think it was pretty interesting having the different perspectives of family members and friends in there. I've never seen that done before in a memoir, and it did offer a lot of perspective. One which I thought was interesting was her father's perspective, because he is a psychiatrist, and it was at a time when she was diagnosed with schizophrenia. It was in the 80s, and her father had never even heard of it, even though he's a psychiatrist, and he kind of took the route of, oh, I'm a doctor, I know how to deal with my daughter, and then him quickly realizing, I actually have no idea what to do with my daughter. You just see the strain on the family, and they had all these hopes for her, and then all of a sudden to face something so severe and so difficult to treat, it's a pretty grueling read. However, like I said, I've never read anything on schizophrenia before. I definitely want to read more on it. So I don't know if this is like one of the best memoirs that covers the subject, but I thought it was pretty good. I assume Amanda Bennett helped shape the novel in areas such as like the friends and the family. It doesn't come off like it was co-written or as if 2 people wrote it, which I liked, you know, because that can be quite awful when the styles kind of clash. If you're into mental health memoirs, I say definitely check this out. I gave it 3 stars on Goodreads. Hey, so I just finished reading Private Parts by Howard Stern. This is a odd book for me to pick up, I think. I do listen to a lot of Howard Stern, mainly the 80s and 90s clips that are on YouTube. Wouldn't be a fan of his current radio show, but I picked this up basically because I was a bit bummed out after the whole schizophrenia thing, so I felt like I needed some sort of fast food for my brain, basically, like a light, trashy read that will make me laugh, possibly. I picked this up because I thought it was going to be funny. It only made me laugh once, and I can't actually remember what it was that I laughed at. But this is just Howard Stern's memoir of his life. It covers everything from childhood to his life in the late 90s, focusing obviously a lot on his radio, his battles with censorship, and his crew on the radio show. I knew going into it wasn't going to blow me away or anything like that. I mean, Howard Stern is like really narcissistic, so at times it was a bit tedious being like, okay, get over yourself already. But it was what I kind of expected it to be. It did what I needed it to do, where it basically just scrubbed out my mind and prepared me for the next book that I'm going to read, so I can go in with a clean slate, basically. So yeah, I gave this 2 stars on Goodreads. Hey, so earlier today I polished off Communion, Encounters with the Unknown, A True Story by Whitley Strieber. Actually, I'm holding it backwards. It's got 2 covers, so what's that? This is a memoir on Whitley's experience with the visitors, as he calls them. He believes he was abducted by aliens in December of 1985, and it starts out kind of rather creepy. Like, I'm gonna admit, I was kind of creeped out by it, until it became hilarious. Little greys and hats, oh my god, and little cardboard suits. Like, I would not, like, I feel like if you encounter an alien and he's wearing clothes, he's good people. It was rather creepy up until he stated that the alien that was in his bedroom, standing like at the end of his bed in the middle of the night, was actually wearing a hat. That's when I completely lost it. Originally it starts out and he believes he's only had one encounter with the unknown beings, and then through hypnosis with a guy called Bud Hopkins, he discovers he hasn't just been visited once, he's been visited multiple times, going all the way back into childhood. He gets regressed to the age of 12, where he like describes being abducted and like seeing like weird lights and all this sorts of stuff, and even he goes into discussion about actually being on the spaceship and seeing other people up there, how the aliens communicate with him, and that he has one sort of familiar alien who seems to take care of him whenever he's taken aboard this ship. I found, actually, do you know what I found really creepy about this was the role his wife had in it, where she also becomes hypnotized. It's discovered that she's aware that he leaves in the middle of the night. She says that she knows she's not supposed to go with him. I thought that was kind of creepy. I was like, ew. But overall, I think if you're into like the paranormal or extraterrestrial sci-fi, you'd enjoy this. Like, I thought it was a kind of fun read. He could be right, he could be a complete lunatic, who knows, but I just, take it with a pinch of salt. The description of the probing, I was like, and to be honest, like, I don't really believe that now, because, like, I mean, what are aliens looking for? Like, unless they're all studying to be proctologists, I don't understand why they're coming to Earth, taking humans, and just, like, shoving probes up their bum. I gave this 3 stars on Goodreads. Hey, so I just finished reading The Penguin Book of Witches, edited by Katherine Howe. This is a collection of various witch-related historical documents. So it starts off in Europe, in the UK, with the various witch trials that happened, and then it moves on to America and the Salem witch trials, and I'd say half the book is dedicated to the Salem witch trials. It takes sections from a witch hunter manual written by King James. It also has the court transcripts of the Salem witch trials, and overall it's a very interesting read if you're into this kind of thing. I've always been interested in witches and the witch trials and things, and I studied it briefly in school, but I would like to kind of learn more about it, and I think this is a great place to start because it's small, it doesn't take you very long, and it's pretty thorough. The only thing I will say is that I was quite disappointed in the end, because there's a section called After Salem where you would think it would wrap up in the modern day of like what really happened in Salem, like what happened to the people who became sick, who were having fits and visions and things like that. I always had the belief that it was due to like a fungus growing on their food. I've looked it up on the internet and people are debunking that, saying, well, why would it only be one member of the family who'd get sick? So now I'm kind of like, ooh, what was that all about? I'd say a lot of people were just like, oh, I don't like my neighbor, I'm going to accuse them of witchcraft. I thought I would kind of struggle with this. I have been putting off reading it for a little while, but it wasn't a difficult read whatsoever. I thought I'd find the fact that a lot of it is written in Old English and, you know, the court transcripts, I thought I'd struggle with those. Not a problem. But yeah, like it talks about, you know, witches in the Bible, the fact that there's never been any solid description of what a witch actually is in the Bible. It just says things like, thou shalt not suffer a witch to live. So it's basically up to like the men's interpretation of that. But overall, I found it really interesting. I kind of couldn't put it down, and I'd really recommend it if you're into history and if you're particularly into the witch trials. And I gave this 3 stars on Goodreads. Okay, so I'm back again. I've finished reading Ariel by Sylvia Plath. I kind of feel a bit funny about this because I don't think you're meant to read a poetry collection in one sitting, or rather quickly, as I just did. However, I've got this out for 3 more weeks from the library, so I'll be reading it again and again and again, and I just want to kind of memorize some of the stuff, because I just don't think you can take poetry in and just by reading it once. I think it has to be read over time. So I think my favorite poems are Cut, Medusa, Lady Lazarus, Wintering. There's a few more there. I know everyone loves Daddy. I wasn't kind of really impressed with Daddy. I don't know, maybe it's like one that grows on you or something over time. But I think Cut really just jumped out at me for some reason. I've heard Lady Lazarus before. I've heard Sylvia Plath doing a reading of it on YouTube, obviously. And I was like, oh yeah, I was there last week. But yeah, I mean, Sylvia Plath is just like my kind of angst. There's just something about her writing that I just really kind of connect to and I'm very drawn to. I really like the imagery that she uses and the certain themes that she writes about. Like I said, I'll be reading this and reading it again and just trying to absorb as much of it as possible into my brain. And I gave this 4 stars on Goodreads. Hey, so I just finished reading Lord of the Flies by William Golding. This is about a group of boys who find themselves on an island after a plane crash. At first they think they'll be fine, they'll be rescued, and they'll just maintain the status quo until then. But they struggle to maintain their social constructs, and they start to question who should be in charge, who should be their leader, and who has the right to power. And their little paradise society starts to crumble as they are corrupted by power. So there's some pretty heavy themes in this, and like I'm surprised like so many children have to read this, because I know if I'd read it when I was little I wouldn't have been able to wrap my head around what they're actually talking about in it. But I loved this book. I am so pissed off that I didn't read it when I was little, because I know that I would have just loved it so much, and just it would have been one of those books that I would have really cherished. Unfortunately, my school believed it was better to get kids reading Harry Potter than the actual classics, but Harry Potter Can Actually Kiss Me cock, because this was awesome. And I wasn't expecting it to be so graphic, like with the animal sacrifices and the deaths of a few characters. I was a bit shocked. I was like, holy shit, this is metal. Like, that's fucked up. So that aspect definitely appealed to me. Do you know what? The second I finished reading this book there, I wanted to start it again, just because I enjoyed it so much. So that kind of just goes to show, and I haven't had that kind of feeling in a really long time. So I gave this 4 stars on Goodreads. Hey, so I just finished reading Bad Feminist by Roxane Gay. I have to be honest, I was quite disappointed with this. I was under the impression that this was going to be about being an unconventional feminist, and it turns out Roxane Gay is pretty much your everyday run-of-the-mill feminist. So it covers Roxane Gay's life, her thoughts on gender and sexuality, race and entertainment, politics, gender and race, and then back to her at the end. Overall, I found this to be quite a lackluster read. I feel like there are certain areas of this book where she could have really pushed the envelope, but she chose not to. And I feel like it would have been far more interesting a read if she had done that. There were certain topics that I felt that were just very tired and worn out. Like, I feel like everyone knows that the relationships in Twilight and 50 Shades of Grey are really bad relationships, and they shouldn't be idolized by young girls or young women. When it came to her thoughts on being a bad feminist, it turns out that she has a very stereotypical view of feminists, i.e. someone who's basically a tomboy. You know, you don't enjoy wearing dresses, you don't shave your legs or your armpits, and it's that kind of thing. And she kind of jokes about it at first, but then reiterates this fact at the end of the book by saying that she enjoys wearing dresses and she loves reading Vogue and pink is her favorite color, and these are all the reasons why she's a bad feminist. And I just thought, and I don't think bopping your head along to the rhythm of blurred lines makes you a bad feminist. I think it just makes you someone with questionable music taste. But I just thought that that was a really kind of weak opinion to have, of like, this is what makes me a bad feminist. I thought it was going to be, going by the hype that everyone was talking about, I thought it was going to be a lot more than it actually was, and I just felt very disappointed by it. There were certain topics that I did enjoy reading about, like when she was talking about the state of female rights in the US. That's something I don't know a lot about. Like, I know you've got Planned Parenthood and things like that, and abortion is legal, but I know like the Republicans are just trying to constantly shut it down. But that's like one thing that I feel very passionate about, as we in Ireland have no rights to our own bodies. We have to travel abroad if we want to terminate a pregnancy. Another bit that I found quite interesting was when she was talking about why is Hollywood so white, basically, and what is Hollywood's problem when it comes to casting people. Like, it tends to whitewash their movies. It's a very uncomfortable thought to have, to think that the reason why Hollywood whitewashes its films is because they believe that their white audience won't be able to relate to anyone who's not white, and that really disturbs me. But I feel like she could have gone into more detail on that subject and it would have been really kind of riveting to read about it. But overall, I just didn't think this was a great feminist read, so I ended up giving this 2 stars on Goodreads. So that has been my afterthoughts. Let me know if you've read any of these books and what you think, and I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will talk to you soon. Goodbye.